Hey, what's up? We're back. Jason, SE Wrestle, Dan Ward, Ward Wrestling, and we're back for our weekly show here, which is awesome. Jason
Yeah,
is out in
man.
Utah having a great time. So,
I am.
excuse me while my throat is. But man, last week I know nothing really happened last week, so we kind of took the week off. There wasn't much to talk about, but we're back this week with a lot. We had what U20s and U23s went on. We had our
Hmm.
big FAWA freestyle and Greco state champion that's tied into Spartan Nationals. And then just yesterday down in Florida, where I'm at, they changed the classifications. So
Was that
now that's a
expected?
yes. So there was writing on the wall that it was coming this year.
Hmm.
Um, so apparently every few years, from what I understand,
Yeah,
they
yeah. It's pretty standard that um every state association does kind of a realignment either every 2 to 3-ish years. Um, but what's interesting is because it's sometimes two, sometimes it's three, it's different states. It's interesting for me because sometimes we get states that change, but this year, let's see, North Carolina changed, South Carolina changed, Georgia changed, um, Alabama changed. So I don't think I was expecting Florida to
yeah,
change.
because apparently 2 years ago, excuse me, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago when it changed, and then so now it's supposed to change for the next two seasons, and pretty cool stuff. I mean, I to be honest with everybody, I've only been around a few years, right? But I don't know exactly. I look at 400 schools and all the print looks exactly the same to me. But I did, I did notice things like, obviously
well,
Sunset, Somerset, and Jensen Beach.
well, I think it's important for the average person to understand why they change, right? Why do you change them? Okay, so first and foremost, like in Florida didn't change the number of classifications. They just changed where the schools fell within the classifications. In some states, like Georgia, we went from 7 to 6. North Carolina had a proposal to move from 4 to 8. Okay. Now, will there be 8 in wrestling? I think we're still waiting to find out kind of what's going to happen in that regard. But they change the number of classifications sometimes. Sometimes they keep the number of classifications the same. And then one of the primary reasons we do this, and I've been doing I've been pulling all the history for like Florida and Georgia and all these different places. And you'll see once upon a time, like Winter Springs was like a 1A school. Okay. Or South Dade won the state title as a 2A school for years in the state of Florida, right? And now they're a huge school and they're 3A. And the primary reason we do it is because schools get built, kids move from one school to another as far as a new school getting built, and you you don't want to keep everybody the same because your enrollment numbers change dramatically or can change dramatically.
Yeah, and I
So that's
imagine
the
they
reason.
fluctuate because let's say you have let's say we're in, I, I live in Lake Nona, so I'm just using that as an
Yeah,
example.
that's a great example, though.
What I'm about to say is not facts, guys. I'm just using it. So, for example, Lake Nona is a huge school, big population. But let's say they open up, I don't know, Innovation High School, we'll call it, right? Because they did open up a middle school over there, but Innovation High School. Well, if this is at 4,000, but now half those kids or a quarter of those kids that lived over by Innovation Way now move. Now they fluctuate down to 2,200 and this school goes to 2,200. Well, then that could cause a shift in basically as an example, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what you have to understand is sometimes they open a school and they open it up and all 9th through 12th graders go there. Sometimes they do it because they planned well and now they're letting the new freshman class or a portion of the new freshman class begin at the school, and then they'll be the first graduating class from that school. So it's a slower impact over time. But the whole reason we do this is to make it fair as far as
Right.
enrollment numbers. I mean,
Right.
and enrollment
Yeah.
is such a manipulative. You can manipulate enrollment. You could, I mean, if in Florida, you guys it's kind of the wild, wild west. You know, I mean, I don't know. Landon Hawley must have gone to what, 2 or 3 different schools. And again, nobody hold me to whatever, but you know, you can play football at one school and then I think he wrestled at another school, you know, and different things like that happen. That's not always the case in other states. In fact, it's not the case in other states.
Yeah, and I know not in his instance. And great family, by the way, the Hollies, we love them.
Yeah,
The little,
I love to watch
little,
Landon
yeah,
play football
and
and wrestle.
his daughter's awesome. His daughter, sorry, his little sister is awesome to watch out there wrestling, but not in his case. But I know in a lot of cases, like um, I know a young man down in South Florida that is at a school that doesn't have wrestling, so he can choose a school or an opportunity to wrestle somewhere in a certain vicinity or an area, right? So, or there's some kids up here that maybe are homeschooled in Central Florida, and then
Right.
obviously their home school doesn't have a wrestling team, so they can go
Right.
and try to do that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things. I mean, some shifts that I noticed quickly, and I haven't broke it down to the ridiculous. I know Brant Parsons has. So anybody goes over to his site or his Facebook, you'll see a lot of great articles that he's already come out with, and a lot of things. And maybe he's got somebody fixing something in his house. So if they're gone in the next 40 minutes, we'll try and get them on. If not, just keep an eye on his site. He's been putting a lot of good stuff out there.
Well, and
About that.
I just want to say that Georgia's had theirs posted for a while, Alabama's had theirs posted for a while, and all these different things. The way I view it, because I do so much of freestyle and Greco during this time, that I put all of kind of the high school stuff on the back burner until we finish Fargo. We are done with Fargo. We're done with duels and all those things. And then I'm like, okay, I'm into the new high school season. I'll figure that out.
Where it feels like Parsons doesn't stop, man. That guy's always doing something. And I know, he's obviously in a business that is mixed with facts and opinions and research and everything, as that's what he does. And sure, some people agree, disagree, whatever they want to do, but the work he puts in for the wrestling community is just absolutely incredible. But some things that I noticed was, obviously we were talking about the Somerset thing, Somerset being moved up to 2A now. Coach Bosucci has come out and has said that he's going to look into it, because numbers show 1486, the cusp shows 1492. So we'll see how that plays out. We saw Jensen Beach get moved up as well. So that's 1A juggernauts, right? Powerhouses that have moved up. Some shifts. I mean, lucky me, Zephyr Hills Christian is now in our region. So the good thing is I'll get to see Coach Tim a lot. I like him. He's a good dude.
He's a great guy.
The funky monkey, but he's got a hell of a program, and now we have to see him every year in the regional. But it's good.
At least for the next 2 years.
At least for the next 2 years. Yeah, we saw some shifts at 2A. I think Tampa Jesuit and Lake Gibson are in the same region. I think was that already? Were they always in the same region, or was that a shift and now they're back?
I don't
remember.
That's a question for Parsons, because I don't know, because I cover 7 states. I don't know it to that degree. But I will say
we did see Brandon and go back into that district with Lake Gibson, so we'll see that again. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So no. I was just going to say, I will say this. One of the things that always makes this really interesting is that, so for years, say 3A Region 4 and 1A Region 4 have been just super tough, just extremely tough to get through. Whether you're an individual wrestling trying to get to the traditional state tournament, or whether you're a team trying to get through to get to the duels in Kissimmee. And sometimes with this realignment, because the way it works out, you have little shifts that move the power, or that it puts regions in that are much more difficult. And one of the things that I think most people don't understand is the people who are doing this, they're looking at it geographically, and they're looking at numbers of what the schools are. don't look at how good this team is or that team is or any of those sorts of things. They're just doing it based on very much kind of a formula. And sometimes that means you get regions of doom that are just super tough, or we break apart regions that were super tough, and now you give opportunities for other people that maybe you can get through.
Yeah, we saw. It's been fun watching Winter Springs and Lake Gibson go at it the last few years, and now they shifted Winter Springs, so they're not. We're not.
Well,
going
and
to
I
see
bet
that,
you Winter
but
Springs isn't
terrible.
sad about that.
Well, they slipped. Now they got Fleming Island and Clay.
Well, and but I mean, but to be fair, and that's not a knock on Coach Sarah's team or or the Winter Springs, but Lake Gibson has won every state title, dual state title, except for one in 2A. I mean, man, if that's a team you have to beat every single year, I mean, that's tough. You don't get a chance to even get there with the
and I
current
got to
format.
say, I absolutely love the coaching staff at Tampa Jesuit. I absolutely love the coaching staff at Lake Gibson. I think both of them are unbelievable. And I'm kind of, if they weren't together and they're back together, because I could sit in the gym and watch those two duel. If they just said, hey, we're going to spend a Saturday afternoon and we're going to go duel after duel after duel after duel, I would be there and I would pay to watch it, because those kids,
right,
those two teams going at it are so much fun to watch. The coaches are Hall of Fame staffs, right? Like they've just, it's so fun to see the chess game and watch it play out. And I can't wait to see more of that. But both those teams are obviously a high level. So we saw that. I think there was some.
And I was just gonna say we see it with Southwest. Southwest Miami is maybe the second best team in the state in 3A, and it's too far away for you and I to go see them against South Dade. But that might be. I mean, we don't get to see Southwest against the other teams. You know what I mean?
No, and that was one thing I looked at right away, because I feel like Mick does a tremendous job down there in Southwest, and obviously, um, he's in South Dade's district, in South Dade's region. He's in there all, and it's probably made him just want to grind that much harder. He does a fantastic job, but I feel like this might be a guy that might have a dual state title or a dual state runner up or a dual, like he never gets a chance to show up on that stage because of where he sits. He's got to wrestle them in the district, and not just South Dade, but you've got Doral and you've got, I mean, Southridge and Palmetto and Homestead and Coral. I mean, I can keep going, and they're just, it's tremendous in what them and South Dade go through in there. But I would have loved to see maybe them get split up, and we could see that happen later on down the road. But it didn't happen.
It would be, well, so when I was there, because we were both at the duels and I was at the traditional, was that and you were, was that had the conversation of, I understand doing the first round where you do it, but it would be kind of nice to kind of seed it. I mean, you don't have to send Southwest to Region 1 for a duel, but I mean, you could send some teams, or whatever the team is, up to Region 3, and I'm not saying they would get through. I just think there's a way so that it's very the way football does it, and that's fine. And I don't know that they're ever going to change, but it would be nice to kind of see some of these really perennial top teams get to Kissimmee and at least have a shot of a weekend of making a run. You know what I mean?
It's the same thing in other sports, right? Like obviously South Dade owns that thing, right? They've done what they've done. They've proved. Mick is getting closer and closer, and he's working at what he's building. But South Dade, it would just be nice if they went, okay, well, what did they do in was it the NBA that they shifted was it the NBA or the NFL where they shifted this year, where how they get into the playoffs, where they said, okay, instead of being the best in your division, they went to like records throughout everywhere. So if it used to be where like the top 2 teams from each area went boom, right? And now they did something where, well, if you have 4 teams over here that are all 10-6, and you've got a team that's 5-10, but they're second in their division, they shouldn't go to the playoffs, right? So they've kind of shifted how they do that. And I feel like, wouldn't it be cool in our state if it got to a point and then they said, okay, now we're going to seed it like you're saying, and let's see what Southwest can do on the state, or can we send 2 teams, right? Maybe Southwest and South Dago, or if it's Doral that year, or if it's Palmetto that year, or if it's whoever that year, right? Miami South. But it would be cool to see 2 from everywhere, because 2 don't go, right? It's the top person that comes out, correct?
Yeah. Well, you get 8, and there are 4 regions, but the challenge is that so there are 2, but they're not 2 from say district 13, 14 are on one part, 15 and 16. So you'd have to be in another part of the district to even get to that like Elite 8 part of the thing. And then that opens up another question of you send these teams up and they get beat in that round to a South Dade. Like Cypress Bay has been there multiple times and lost to South Dade in that round of the Elite 8. That's an expensive, long trip for a beating, and you don't get to wrestle any more matches. I mean, that's
because they come up for because they come up for the semis and then the finals, right? So maybe the semis. What if they did the semis throughout the regions, and then they made the finals bigger? Maybe Osceola, we do 2 days, and now it's actually bigger brackets. But I
think there's a lot of ways to change it. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can kind of mess with it. But
I agree. But on another note, well, that happened. So if you want to read about it, look about it. Parsons posted a link on his page. I shared it to my page. I'm sure Jason has it somewhere on his stuff. So yeah, go and check it out.
Not yet. I've been in Utah.
Yeah, but they've got PDFs and they've got Excels that you can download right off of FHSAA, that you can have it, look through it, study it, read it, see where you're at. A lot of good stuff happening there. But in the meantime, down here in Florida, now I tried to look around the other states. There was here in Florida, there was a small tournament up in Tallahassee, I noticed. And then in South Carolina and North Carolina, it looked like they had some small tournaments going on, but nothing like what we had down here with the FAWA, Freestyle and Greco States, Spartan Nationals. Wow. Did you get a chance to get on? Did you get a chance to watch anything? Did you get a chance to look at anything?
I looked at a few results, saw a lot of stuff come through on social media, but I did not get to watch any of that. The only time I spent watching any matches were the U20s and U23s. So
they're awesome thing. And we had a bunch of Southeastern guys up there. That was awesome to watch. But let's go. So I think FAWA did a fantastic job this year with Spartan and FAWA did a fantastic job for the FAWA states and Greco states. I thought many more mats. I thought there was great seating. I thought there was good food options and good parking. I thought they did a great job. And the wrestling, of course, was awesome, from watching the little kids all the way up to the bigger kids. And you saw great matchups. A lot of times maybe we don't get during the season because they're in different regions or different districts, and we get to see stuff like that here. Matchups that we don't get to see that often because you don't get to see like Lake Highland Prep's A kids a lot, right? During the season, because they're out traveling their prep schedule.
Right.
So we get to see their kids come in and compete, and we get to see matchups that we like to see there with some of the top FHSAA kids against some of their top kids, and that's fun. That was good. But man, I tell you what, matches. So any match that had a Solis boy in it was tremendous to watch.
So let's start because with the duels, because because you had a couple teams, or you had a team. You had a
I
team
had
with
so
the
I had
boys.
two boys teams and one
Okay.
girls team.
All
And
right.
then
So let's start there and talk a little bit about how the duels went and that sort of thing. And then I'd like to talk about kind of some of
okay.
the
So
winners from the juniors
first
and 16Us.
I would like to say that and I hope no parent or anybody takes this as a shot to them or personal, because it's not a shot to anybody. But I feel like, first of all, every parent who is not happy or has something to say about their coach or coaches should go out and they should build a team, experience the process, go out and go through all that, because it's not easy. So I just did this with these teams, and it is stressful and it is a lot of work, and and it's not easy. So I would like to say that to begin with. So do that, experience that, be a part of a staff that does that, because I think you may, a few things you're going to come back and go, wow, that job sucks, or you're going to come back and you're going to say, wow, I have a new respect for my coach, or you're going to come back and maybe you figured it out. Maybe you're like, wow, uh, I can do this better than he can, or whatever it might be. But you should experience it, because it is a hell of a thing. Um, that being said, it's absolutely fun. Uh, Building it and giving the kids an opportunity to wrestle is great things. To have a Walker staff and Duck staff help me through the process was it. But I'm tired. It was stressful. Kids, you have commits, then uncommits, then you got paid, not paid, then you got show up, not show up, then you got, all the subtle things, the stresses that the coaches go through. So my respect level for the coach, or any parent that is always involved in helping their coach go through that process, has just gotten so much higher. That being said, it was fun. I had a good time. I think, and talking with both Joes for Spartan, Joe DeSena and Joe Miller, I think there's some more adjustments they're going to make for next year to kind of make it a little bit more of a special part of the tournament. So what happens is it comes at the end of the tournament, and it comes when a lot of kids are tired, a lot of parents want to go home, a lot of people are trying to rush stuff, so we tend to get rushed, right? And I think that causes a little bit of if for lack of better terms, right? And but the wrestling and the matches that we saw were awesome. Getting to see a Kong and a Spartan team one, and getting to see a team from California that came in. Spartan brought a Canadian national team in as their team 2 team, which was tremendous. That was fun to watch. You had the team Puerto Rico there from Esadao. BB's blue team was tremendous. I mean, they had some really good kids on there with Max Brady and Cameron French and those guys. BB had 2 teams, and you saw the George Jenkins team brought a team that was really, really good. Oh, hey, hold on. We may have a guest here. There he is.
Brant
Now
Parsons, look out.
look at that.
You guys really want to see me, huh?
Yeah, now Mo, Larry, and Curly are together.
Hey, which one am I?
You're Mo.
That's Curly, dude. That's Curly.
And all the
Is
kids
it?
right
No,
now.
that's
Mo's the leader. Curly is
Yeah.
the bumbling fool.
Oh, okay.
And
So that's
So we're all
Dan.
Curly.
and that's me, yeah. So yeah, but just to put a count, they did a great job. I got to say, this year the tournament was way better than last year. I know that Coach Mason and his staff met with Spartan, and they had a meeting every Wednesday for the last 6 months to make sure that this didn't go bad, right? And I think for the most part, they did an excellent job. But having 2 teams, 3 teams there and experiencing that, I wish I would have taken more pictures at the duels, but I got to a point where I was watching, but I was also tired. I had had enough. It was long days, right? But to see the kids and have my stuff on, it was fun. And the duels were, as duels are, absolutely fun to watch. Great
All right.
matches.
Let's pivot back to the classifications, because we have the Nostradamus of Florida wrestling with us, and I want to know for Brent what you think is the biggest change.
Well, I mean, you can't talk about the classifications and not talk about 2A, right? I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. I think most people who do the math now, I am not a person who spends a lot of time on this, but I have a lot of people that talk to me, and they had been doing the math, and we knew Jensen Beach was coming up for a long time. That was kind of expected. Somerset, not expected, at least on the people that I've been talking to. The fact that they're moving up, you have Riverdale moving down, Palmetto Ridge moving down, which may not have the same, firepower with Blaine going to St. John Newman, but that's the story, is just how crazy 2A is. And even some movement inside it that if you look at if you're like me, you look at the nitty gritty, Winter Springs, the 2A4, just a weird move, I think, away from all the Seminole County teams, but puts them in 2A1. Maybe waters down 2A2 a little bit, because now 2A2 has Tampa Jesuit in it. So that one kind of it stands out because it's weird, but also now you're making 2A1 harder, and Tampa Jesuit coming back to 2A2 is crazy, especially when you think about state duels. That's now a Friday night meeting. If they and Lake Gibson are the top 2 teams again, even if they're the top 4 teams, they're now playing. They're going to match up on Friday night at the state duels now. And then 2A4 suddenly gets a lot harder. You have, it was, I wouldn't say it was a weak, it was the weakest region. I think the numbers would even show that. Now you have Jensen Beach.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
You have Somerset, you have Merritt Island still on, growing, and Heritage growing. We're kind of leaders. Now they've got to deal with, 2 more teams from the South. And so just some interesting things. I think, so most of the stories in 2A, there's other things, but that's the main one, is just how tough 2A has gotten.
Seeing a Winter Springs Fleming Island semifinal matchup, that might not suck.
I mean, yeah, or Clay. I mean, there's even looking at 2A2, you have Lincoln now, Middleburg's there. I mean, just every little thing seemed to get harder in 2A. If anything, I will say 2A3 might be more winnable now. But again, now you have Palmetto Ridge and Riverdale, and so it's tough all over the place.
Yeah, and fun for, I told them, fun for my son's region, because we inherited the Funky Monkey in Zephyr
That's
Hills
true.
Christian, and so that'll be fun, and I'm sure that's gonna. I did have a question. It feels like, so I'm glad you jumped on, because I don't know shit.
I'm glad I have my
I
garbage
default,
disposal fixed.
yeah, I default to you guys always to get my knowledge, but I feel like the regions grew. Like when I look at this, I feel like there's more teams in the regions now. Does it feel like, talking to coaches, some of them over the last couple of days since you posted this, they feel like maybe is FHSAA pushing to go to 4?
Well, I haven't. I've had my head to the grind in my free time, just trying to go through every district and match it up. And I'm working on my rankings now. But I do know, if you look at FHSAA bylaws, right, which I have been reading, if you get over 400 teams, then it can be split into 4 classifications. Lots of interesting things on it. I know it's 410 is what they're saying, and we could even talk like some really nitty gritty kind of numbers as to why 1A should have another team in it, according to their bylaws. But we're at 410. But out of that 410, I've also noticed, and again, I'm crazily, into every little thing. There's probably 10 to 15 teams that are listed that haven't competed in 3, 4, 5, 8 years. And they're showing up there. They don't have a coach. And some of them, you can't find anything on their website about the school even offering the sport. Did their AD just click all the sports again because they've been on like classifications for a couple of years? So I don't think there are 410 teams. I think you'll see, and I just was just writing with a coach. I listed all the ones that I had, and I was like, they haven't competed since at least 2020, 2017. All these schools, they're just showing up again. But as you reach 400, you're supposed to be able to go into 4 classifications. So there are a lot of teams. There are more teams each year. You see more teams getting added to 1A, but I don't think we're up. Technically, we're at 410, but I don't know that they're really at the threshold of actual teams to go into a 4th classification. And I don't know how much talk has been done on that. It's something I think most people are anticipating, but I don't know how closely we are to that happening.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in a state, obviously, that if you put us on the East Coast, we'd go from like Georgia all the way to Virginia, right? So it's not like we're a small state. We've got a lot of things, and schools are growing. People are moving into our state, and we see that. But I just got a text message, not to transition this, but the text message was interesting. And it
Just
said,
like, oh, look at me, Louis.
no, but since I have you on here and you're
Okay.
like the
Was it about me?
No, it says, hey, we need to do an interview. We in the public, he's saying, we need an interview with perspective, ramifications, and how to best navigate the new NIL that was just approved for high school. Has either one of you had a chance to look into any of that? And I see Jason right now going, as soon as I said that.
No,
But
I just know that because I deal with different states, we get different things. And I what's really interesting to me, some states have adopted it, some states have not adopted it so far. I think Georgia's adopted it. And I think really the biggest question as it relates to it not only in high school, but with the college landscape is kind of what the level of education has to rise significantly for everyone to understand what is going on as it relates to it. And it is so new. I don't think that even those that are doing it every single day don't understand exactly what's going to happen. Right. And what are the consequences from those decisions and everything else. So,
and honestly, we just saw Brant post like maybe 8 minutes ago that said NIL was approved. So it wasn't like
it was approved today.
This hasn't happened. I haven't even had a chance to read, but I got to imagine there are ramifications. There are process, because I can't
go to my college football days covering it at
because I can't imagine, and I hope it's not like this, but I don't know. Like, I am school A, and that is school B, and there is wrestler A, and wrestler A is a multi-time whatever, high-ranking whatever, and school A says, "Hey, I'll give you a bag," and school B says, "I'll give you a bag." That's money for all you people out there.
Well, okay, I'm glad you cleared that up. I was I'm older than you, so I'm like, man, what is this hip terminology he's talking about?
I want to make
like a bag? Is that like Louis Vuitton? Is it?
So I give you a bag and they give you a bag, and that kid decides, okay, well, Team A offered me more Benjamins than Team B, so I'm going to go there. Now, if that is the case, wow, and how can we even now say to a school, you're in recruiting violations, but you properly did this, but you properly didn't do, so there's got to be some sort of outline. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's right. A few things. One, this all started when the NCAA dropped the ball many years ago and decided that if we pretend this doesn't exist, then it won't happen. And by doing so, they'd failed to ever put any sort of plan in place, get any sort of control over it. And now you've seen what has happened there. And now they're trying to rein it back in. And I don't know that you can do that. But if the NCAA hadn't been sitting around for the longest time counting their money and not sharing it, and then perhaps you wouldn't have this crazy NIL because they would have been able to control it. So I think what these high school associations are doing is kind of trying to get in front of it to have some kind of control over it. I haven't. I only know it was passed. I know Florida's the 36th or 37th state to do it. I know it probably really applies to football, and I know like places like South Florida will probably be pretty crazy with this sort of thing. But on the football scale, at least, Florida was losing athletes because athletes were like, well, as you said, Jason, Georgia has it or another state has it. They're going to those states to do it. So I think part of this is to allow it to happen in Florida so athletes can do it. I don't know the ramifications of what it means. I don't know what they're going to be able to do. I haven't read anything on it beyond the fact that they've passed it and they're trying to set up those rules and things to follow. But it's a reality that's there. And the reality, at least on the football and probably basketball level, was Florida was losing athletes that could go do the NIL other states. So that's why the FHSAA passed it.
Yeah. Well, and just to piggyback on that, we in Georgia saw athletes come in who were not originally Georgia athletes.
Yeah.
Who came in, competed during their season, and then transferred back out. I think they might even graduated from their old school.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things. I think you're right, Brant, in that it's going to have a huge impact on football and basketball. How much it actually has an impact on wrestling, I don't know. I'm fearful that any of the other sports are more collateral damage
Right.
to the decisions and things that happen as a result of football and basketball not being decisions being made for wrestling specifically, just the unintended consequences that seem to happen because of decisions that were made for you to be able to do
Right.
this or that.
And I'm guessing one could be I'm a football kid and I'm a wrestler kid, right?
Yeah.
But I was just we don't want to use that recruited word, right? But for lack
we
of
had
better
two.
terms,
I can count in my
I
head right
was
now.
just
2 to
right,
3
I
kids
was-
that went and played football somewhere else last year came back to another school for wrestling. So
right.
that's
But
happening
let's
already.
say but let's say I go to a school, and that school is a big football school. I don't know. Northwestern is a big football. Well, it was when I was a kid. I don't know. So we'll just say that. But anyway, let's just say school A, right? But the coach or the boosters or whoever is the one that is giving you what they're giving you to lure you into that football program. But you're also a state level wrestler, not just a wrestler. You're a state placer, a state winner, or a state qualifier, and you want to wrestle also. But the football coach is now saying, or the football program is now saying, wait a second, you're our liability. We don't want you wrestling. Can't that affect? Is that one way that it could be affected?
Sure.
They do that now.
Yeah.
Just now there's not NIL money, but there are kids that go to football schools and the football coaches aren't wrestling, pro wrestling, and they eventually stop wrestling. I mean, it happens now. I think the argument that you can make along your way is if you're signing a deal for NIL and this person's like, you can sign this, but then you can't do anything but football. Again, I don't know how into the weeds the wording will get. I mean, but that happens now. And like I said, kids go play football somewhere else and they come back and wrestle at the school they were at, the year before. Some just wrestle at the school that they're playing football at just because they're there. I mean, the movement's already there. It's just now, can it be done officially
Legally?
with money legally and with actual goods and services, being exchanged to where, there may be kids that transfer to other schools and, they know the different rules to get transferred. School choice has changed the game more than anything.
Right.
But now they can use school choice, but then also now they get paid when they do it. But the movement's always been there, especially recently.
The thing that concerns me the most, and it concerned me the most as it related to college students, and it's no different for high school students, and it might even be worse for high school students, is that, like you said, Dan, like receiving a bag or receiving this or receiving shoes or receiving this or whatever, they all have monetary value.
Mm-hmm.
Once you hit a specific level monetarily, you are responsible for paying the government
mm-hmm.
the taxes as a result of that. And I think a lot of people see it as a free way to grab $1,000. Well, it's not free. And you can be held. And will they track you down? Should they track you down? All the different things. I don't want to get into that part of it. But the truth is that you're pulling this money, and it is an asset. And it is one of those things that you have to understand the consequences from receiving it.
Well, the financial literacy, and I don't know how you make that to where you have to take. I mean, that's something. I mean, I can remember covering the Orlando Magic in the early 2000s, and a couple guys on that team that had gotten some decent money and were showing off their cars, and some of the vets like, man, you're spending all your money. Oh, I get and those guys, they don't have money now because they didn't have financial literacy and the money didn't stay. I don't know how you make that happen, but that's a huge issue. I think that you're seeing in college and you'll see in high school. People who have nothing now have money, but they don't necessarily have ever been told, what you do with that money and how do you account for it along the same ways.
Well, and then I think, and we'll get on to other topics, but I think like we see in college, I was just talking to my dad about this, where they came out and now with the new where NCAA can pay or do whatever they're going to be able to do now on top of the NIL thing, right? And you may be able to explain
in the long
better.
run, it's meant to dampen the NIL, but yeah, the NCAA payment.
So
thing.
I think that the one positive thing I see at the college level is, and I hope this is the case, more kids are going to stay in college now, the 4 years, and I think we're going to create more degrees and kids that coming out of school with a degree, because the kids that end up going pro after 1 year or 2 years are kids that really need financial help, and they've worked their asses off to get to a level where they're good enough to get drafted or go to the NFL and get that check. But if they're in college now and they can stay there for 4 years and get their degree and make that same kind of money, which they are now, I think that's the positive. The negative, obviously, we know what the negative is. So we don't have to talk about that. There's so much movement. It's hard to keep a kid. The recruiting platform has changed. So at least I guess in the high school level, there's no competing with the pros, right? But I think, and a kid can't leave high school early to go to college, right? So they have to. I mean, they'd have to get.
They figured out ways to leave early.
Figured out ways to do that.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. So maybe, but yeah, I wonder how that affects it. But yeah, it's definitely. I think we could take this subject on, but I'd love to, Brant. Maybe when you start to see the outlines come out, I'd love to get back on, have you back on here with Jason, and we can kind of break it down for everybody, because it's hard.
What I would say,
Definitely.
The story I always tell is I was a walk-on D1 athlete at South Florida, and I ended up graduating from UCF. So that tells you about my college career. Go Knights! But at USF, where I ran track 1 year at Division I level as a walk-on, we were not allowed to even make. This is back before cell phones. I'm that old. But we were not even allowed to make a long distance phone call from our coach's office. So if we had to call home, we weren't allowed to even do it from their office. We weren't allowed to have our coaches do anything to help us in any sort of way financially. Get food from whatever. It's changed so much from even that. And so I think a lot of the people that grew up in that era are now mad that these kids are getting things, but they should have been getting things all along, and they had these really stringent rules. Now I'm going on the college level, just kind of piggybacking on what you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I ran track with kids that could not afford anything outside of college. They were on academic scholarships. Suddenly where you work is allowed or not allowed, because back then, if you worked, SMU, everybody was working at car dealerships or whatever the different boosters were doing.
Working.
But as just a unimportant track and field walk-on that won a few B-level races, I couldn't just go work anywhere I wanted because it had to be approved, because they're worried that people would try to get so we've come a long way from that, and and I think the mindset is slowly kind of changing with that. And so people are going to get paid now. The people that are in charge are trying to control it and also trying to make sure they get their piece of
their
it.
cut.
And at some levels, I know that sometimes when I'm reaching out to athletes for an interview, the athlete will send me an email. Like they'll agree. They're like, yeah, I'm down. I don't care. But then they're like, well, you need to email this person, explain to him who you are, what your show's about, and certain things like that. And then that person has to approve for him to come on the show, or her, or
Yep.
whatever I'm having on my show. So I see that a little bit more kind of the military academies or the military programs, more on that end. Just, I guess they have different types of clearance and stuff, but I think you see it still a little bit. But just to pivot back to FAWA, and I know Brant, you were doing all your research today, so I'm glad you came
Actually, I
on.
haven't had a chance to even look at it yet. So that'll because I was not expecting classifications to drop. I was told fall. So, oh yeah, wait till the fall. I'm like, all right, well, I just need to make sure I'm scheduling my summer. Oh yeah, it'll be fall when they come out.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
get
they
an email
fell.
from the coach. Hey, guess what came out just now?
You see what I did there? Well, they fell.
They did fall. That's pretty funny.
But
Maybe you
yeah,
are the
so
curly.
I am the curly. Anyway, I was at the tournament. I thought FAWA did a fantastic job, and according to an email that was sent out inside the FAWA committee, it looks like the numbers of USA Wrestling memberships has grown exponentially, and they're at numbers that haven't been at those numbers in several years. So I think that's a good sign. I think Mason and his staff and Daisy and her staff and everybody that's involved in there is really doing a good job in growing that. And the tournament was great. I mean, I think there was over 1,000 kids. We got to see amazing matchups. The duels was exciting. And just to rewind a little bit, as I told Jason, I had teams there. I have a huge amount of respect now for coaches that go through this process all the time, because if I was a parent, or if you are a parent that has ever complained about something that has to do with that, you should go experience
There's
being
not
the
many
coach.
of those.
No, right. Go experience being the coach in the process of that, to build something for a little bit, and then maybe your opinion will change, or maybe you'll still think that you're as good or better than the coach, and that's
So,
okay too if that's what you
so
think.
Brandon, let me
Yeah.
ask you a question as far as, because you do rankings now all year long.
All year round, every Tuesday.
Yeah, all year round.
Well, we'll see if this Tuesday, but every Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm not holding you to it. If anybody doesn't, if he doesn't get them done, you know where to contact him.
Yeah,
Anyway.
contact Curly.
And it's our fault because we grabbed them away from the.
Anyway, I understand. I mean, so when you get to the season, is it really folk style rankings, and that now it's kind of a mesh of folk style and freestyle and Greco? How do you kind of balance those things? Because they're very different.
They're different. They're folk style rankings. It's high school rankings. I'm not talented enough to do. I can barely keep track of these rankings. So they're high school rankings. I do watch. I will be honest. I don't put as much into Greco maybe as freestyle, because I think there are some things in freestyle that are comparative to folk style. A great argument on this was one I had repeatedly with a parent last year, and in the summer, his daughter had wrestled another girl, and the girl had won in folk style, and his daughter had won in freestyle. And they did not wrestle again. They were both highly ranked. Both of them did not place, but both were highly ranked through the season. And there was a question of why I had the one over the other. And I was like, well, she won folk style. And he's like, well, my daughter won freestyle. Same weekend. It was folk style Friday, freestyle Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would tend to put a folk style edge just because that's what high school is, but I do watch to see what the results are. And if there's a questionable, not questionable, but there's like something that shakes things up on freestyle, then I try to reach out to coaches or people who are there. I've got, various eyes that I follow up with every week that tell me stuff or will, when I ask things.
Oh.
But
and Brett, that happened all up and down the FAWA this weekend with the Greco and the freestyle. You'll see girl A or boy A win freestyle. You'll see those two match up on Greco, and it goes the other way.
But it's hard to translate them into folk style. If someone is ranked above someone in folk and they win in free, then that kind of okay. If they change and they haven't faced each other in folk, I will usually make that adjustment. one
Yeah.
placed in folk above the other and beat them and then lost in free, then I mark it and I notate it and I watch it because as we grow
It
further
just becomes
away,
a data point, is what basically
Yes.
what you're telling me.
As we grow further away from March, it becomes less relevant only because kids change, kids work out, some kids don't.
Right.
And so maybe a freestyle win in April right after the other one won in folk is not as important as maybe a freestyle win in July, because then you're seeing, well, this guy or girl is obviously maybe putting in more work. I mean, it's tough with off season because there's also kids that are not good off season wrestlers. For whatever reason, some step to the challenge of a season. Some spend all summer just beating themselves up and compete
Correct.
just to stay sharp. But their process is, especially on the higher level ones, it's about peaking at certain times. One of those times to peak is March. It's not to peak, at such and
Right.
such high school in May. When they're not making weight and they're just showing up and doing
Right.
whatever. So you try to keep all that, in line
In the
while
back,
you're doing the
your
right
back
thing.
pocket as you're kind of thinking about it.
My database or spreadsheet that I use is full of all those kind of different
Well,
notes and stuff.
I mean, you guys are unbelievable because I can't imagine. I think I've had conversations with both of you before where I'm like, people have reached out to me over the years that I've been involved in this. Over the years, I guess it's years now.
It is.
Um,
You're old.
and they say, why don't you do rankings? Why don't you do rankings? Why don't you do rankings? And I said, there's enough people doing them. Plus, I don't want to do them because they're really hard to do. And it takes a lot of work. And I've talked to you two. One of you does the whole state, and then one of you does like 10 states. I mean, you guys, how much work do you guys put into to get this up to our kids? And God bless you guys. I mean, because I think for as many people, you're going to have the small percentage that are like, you suck, you don't know what you're talking about. My kid's better than that kid, and that shit happens.
Yeah, but
right?
I blocked you.
But, yes, you
I
blocked
don't
me.
get your text anymore.
You don't get my text.
Surprisingly, I get very, 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 very few of those anymore.
Yeah, but I think
so
for the
that's a good
most
sign.
part, the community obviously appreciates you guys. But man, the work you put in.
Well,
I think
it's funny to piggyback on this real quick, and I'll let you. I was just talking with a coach today, right? One of the many coaches I have conversations with about classifications, and something was said that something should be corrected, but the person probably won't admit that they're wrong. And I said, that's the one thing that I've always said. Listen, if I'm wrong and you can show me I'm wrong, I'll be the first to tell you, oops, I messed up, and I'll fix it. So I think that goes a long way into maybe the community's acceptance of mine. I don't feel.
Well, you have a sticker. You have a sticker and a shirt that
I
says
have a
"Prove
shirt
me
I'm
wrong."
wearing that
Yes.
says that you prove
You
me
have
wrong.
a sticker. Yeah.
But that's different. That's me thinking that you're better and you're not. But as far as like being wrong, like officially, like, oh, I didn't know that this match had happened. But the ability to say, oops, yeah, I got that one wrong, and fixing it, I think that goes a long way. But I interrupted you, Jason.
Yeah, and I want Jason to talk about it. And I could tell you guys real quick is when they call me or when they message me or when they say something to me, I say, guys, you need to communicate with them, whether it's Jason or whether it's Brant. These guys can't guess, right? And yes, the argument, well, they've been doing this long enough, they should know where to look or they should know where to do this. Okay, but they have a system and a process that takes them hours already. To have to then take another hour to dig through and try to find stuff and go on a witch hunt is not worth it. If you would just text them, hey, you probably didn't notice, but my kid was in Alaska this weekend.
Put everything in track. Oh, I'm sorry.
And right. My kid was in Alaska this weekend and had a great win over a nationally ranked kid or something. And then we would know it, right? Like just communicate with them. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
Maybe not have a duels tournament on paper, but go on.
Yes. So I think that I think for me, what Brant said was 100% right. Like Brant and like you, I have great relationships with, I mean, pretty much every single coach. I mean, they're not the ones who are reaching out. They're not the ones who are complaining. They're not the ones who are doing this or doing that. And you have to remember, it really is a lot of times it's a new parent who doesn't really understand. understand the intricacies and all of the layering that goes with it. And the one thing I would, if I were to just to be able to say something to everyone who is kind of new and wondering about it and everything else, and that is just take a minute, allow for all of the data to kind of fall to help understand it. And we do it because we're simply trying to promote the sport. We're really trying to, I mean, I've been a part of the sport for so long now. If you just went back in time to, 1990 or 1992 or whatever, there was no coverage. There was nothing that was going on, and I know you don't have that historical perspective, but let me just kind of explain that we have now evolved to the point where people are talking about it. People are paying attention to it because Brant is putting in a lot of time. Before Brant was doing KABRA, he was at the Orlando Sentinel. And you can tell when people like Buddy Collins and different individuals are spending time doing the work. And you may not always agree with what is written or what is posted or anything along those lines, but to me, people personalize it. And it's not a personal thing. It's simply an opportunity to share an opinion and to talk about and to promote and talk about the sport. And that's what I would try to communicate to your new people as it relates to it. So anyway, that's my soapbox.
Yeah.
Two things to piggyback off that. One, the reason I started doing this to this level, I was like, this should get the treatment that we gave all the college football teams or the Magic or whatever. And that's what I try to do. And two, you're the one that made this point, Jason. I know we've had this conversation multiple times, and it's what everybody is in their own small little circle, and that's all that they take in, be it their team, be it their district, be it the matches that they're at. And when the classifications came out yesterday, everybody went to their classification, their district, their school. They're hyper focused on that. What I have to do, and then you even on a bigger scale, is I have to be hyper focused on 64 districts or 64 districts in the state and everything that happens in those districts, and 40 tournaments on a weekend during the high school season, and 5,000 kids, and I'm ranking 1,500 of them, but you're only seeing your kid's weight, maybe your kid's district. And I never thought of it really. I mean, I guess I kind of, but you had, like I said, we've had this discussion with coaches with us together, and I'm sure you have even when I'm not there, but that idea that you were able to enunciate, saying, they're in this little world and they don't see the world that we're seeing just because we have to see it that way. And so we have to walk them through that also. So to them, they are so hyper focused on this. This is right. This is right. Well, we're looking at, a much, much bigger picture.
Well, and I think that's everything, right? I think that also skews their views. I think that also skews their opinions. I think that also
100%.
skews everything.
Well, it does.
Because
and there's nothing wrong in that. Like that.
Right.
And I think that's the main point, is they're not wrong per se to have this. They just don't realize, I've come to, in my many years of doing this, I have coaches that when they tell me their kid is good, I can trust that it is. I have coaches that when they tell me their kid is good, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Thanks. But but they're not, and in between,
or they need to prove it.
Well, and sometimes, but based on how I have relationships with 200 plus of the 400 coaches, but based on which ones tell me different things, I can tell because in their worldview, this kid's really good. He was 6-0 last weekend. Well, let me see who they wrestled against. Let me see what he does when he goes against, when he gets into a bigger tournament. And that's how I'm going to base where I put him. So I will have coaches like, oh, I think this guy is too low. I'm like, well, I appreciate your input on that. But certain coaches I know undervalue guys, certain coaches overvalue guys. And it's all based on that idea that Jason pointed out, is what are they seeing? And how expansive is that view of what these kids are?
What's great is these bookend tournaments that probably give you guys a really good idea. At least in Florida, you've got the Danny Byron that comes at the beginning of the season, which typically gets all the hammers, right? And then on the other side,
I'm more concerned, and I'll let you. I'm more concerned with 15 to 25 than I am 1 to 10 is easy to rank. It's
No,
hard
yeah,
for me to
but
rank 10 to
as
25.
far as seeing where these kids weed out at, right? So
Yeah.
you see Danny Byron, and then towards the end of the season, you get like the Braves Invitational, the Singletary, the Greco, whatever, right? All around the same time frame. And then you see maybe there's kids that have gone through the season that are like, man, I'm rocking and rolling here, right? And then they hit one of those three big tournaments and they end up 2-2 or 2-3 or three. And then because they had to wrestle Doral, South Day, Palmetto Ridge, Southwest, whomever is up there, right? And it's like, okay,
So for
now you see.
So for me, one of the things that always like, and I don't do rankings nearly to the degree that Brant does. I just don't. I mean, if you don't know how much time and effort it takes, just take a little bit of time to understand. Like, download all the information and try to figure it out. And I would say that
Go through 40
But
tournaments, every single wrestler in every single weight class, and see what
right,
they get.
it is ridiculous. It is
To
absolutely
do it right. I mean, there's
to
other
do it
ways
right.
to do it easier. As we've seen.
Yeah.
But one of the things that always cracks me up is that, well, my kid's record is blank.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't give two whatevers about somebody's record. A record is one measure, and maybe not even closest to the best measure of the best wrestler. It can be. You can be 25-0 and wrestle 25 whatever and gotten wins and come to the state tournament and win the state tournament.
It's happened.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best person. And I love the kids who test themselves, because that's where you get a ton of information. And this is where I think that people who transition into wrestling and the sport of wrestling and trying to understand it, they look at a baseball team or a football team, and that team is 13-0, and that record means something significantly more. Whereas I want, like, you have heard top coaches say, I want my kids to have losses, right? I want them to go out there and wrestle the best. And CJ Torres, 25-7, right? 7 losses to two number one, like a number 1 kid, number 2 kid, number 6 kid in the country. Like, his 25-7 is a whole other
and he walks into
somebody else's 25-7.
Right. And the best thing was said to me, yeah. And meanwhile, CJ walks into a high school tournament in Florida or whatever, and someone's like, oh, he's got 7 losses. And they think, oh, and then they get blown off the mat, right? But to that being said, I remember Danny Nini said something to me once, who, if, like, for anybody who doesn't know, he wrestled for Lake County Prep when they were on their big run through the state. And I remember they would go off and they would battle the best in the country. And then they would come back and they would do their high school thing. I think that's how it worked or whatever. But he would say to me, I'd ask him about records. And he said to me, man, I never look at records. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, look at my record right now. I'm like, at some point he was like 9-5 or something. He's like,
right.
But that's because Mike or Coach Palazzo just took us out to wrestle the best in the country. So now we come back in here and somebody's looking at a bracket, Dan, and he says, they look at my numbers and they say, wow, 9-5, this is going to be something. And then meanwhile, at the time, he's like top 20 in the state or in the country or something, right? And it's like, so some kid looked at their bracket and goes, oh, I got this kid, Danny, who's 9-5. And then he went out and it was over in 38 seconds, right? So yeah, I remember him telling me that.
I don't even put records on my rankings until after January.
Yeah,
I only do that because it looks pretty.
I just think that
it does. It's more information.
I just think that your new parents, way overvalue it and it's not necessarily a good indicator. And that's one of the things I've always had conversations about.
I had a parent this year, and I love this parent, great person. And I'm sure if he hears this story, he'll know it's him. But he said to me,
this is beginning to sound like a therapy session.
I was going to say, what did they say about me?
No. He said to me, did I reach out to the guys that do rankings in our state and tell them that this and this about my kid? I go, this was exactly what I said. I said, I don't know why you would reach out to them for anything. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, if your kid is good enough to be in the rankings or is better than this person, they'll see it. They'll know it. Now I tell them if your kid has a significant win, you could message him and say, hey, Brant, kid had a significant win, check it out, right? And he'll do that. But I wouldn't
I mean,
call him for
I have no
anything other than
problem.
that,
I have no
But
problem with anybody contacting me at any time,
Agreed.
and I take emails all day. I haven't looked. I
no,
probably have two,
but
three in there now.
to call you to say, hey, my kid is injured and he's probably not going to rest for the next few weeks.
Oh,
Please,
please tell me that.
I don't.
Please tell me that. Tell me your kid's injured, so I know that's something to watch that. Tell
Really? So
me
that
your
was
kid was
my.
injured at a tournament, and I've had a coach tell me, hey, listen, this is my fault. I had this kid.
Oh, so
This kid got
that's my
hurt.
fault.
This kid
That's
got
my
hurt at this
fault.
tournament. I told him he shouldn't wrestle, but I let him go finish, and he was a bonehead, and he lost these 2 matches. But he was out there on half a shoulder or whatever. Tell me that, because then I know, because unless I'm at a tournament and I can't be at 40 tournaments every weekend, I don't know necessarily that kids are hurt. I don't know that, and that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily change my rankings. It doesn't, but the more I will say this, I say it to anyone ever, the more, there's never too much information you can give me. I won't
I
always
was
change.
totally wrong then.
I
Sorry
won't
to that
always
parent
change
out there.
things. I won't always change things if you tell me them. I won't always agree with your assessment of my rankings, but if something happened, tell me about it. I have parents that send me notes each week during the season. Hey, this is what my son did this weekend. I'd say 80% of the time I already know that. But you know what? If they keep doing that, the one time they go to one of those East Bay 10 ways over in Hillsboro and I don't get any results, well, now I know they went 7-2 and who they wrestled against. So I always send me stuff. And
So
I
my
will always
fault.
take information.
East
I
Bay
apologize.
10-way.
Yeah, I apologize to that parent then, because in my opinion, I'm like, the only reason you and I ever talked about Daniel when he was wrestling, or if we ever talk about Zachary as he wrestles, would never be about any of that stuff, right? Like we just talk because we know each other. But I don't think I would ever. I told him I don't know if I would ever text him for anything. If your kid's good enough, he'll notice it. He'll see the matches. If the coaches are sending the right information, they'll know it. And if he sees that he hasn't
But the
wrestled for a
coaches aren't
couple of weeks,
always sending the
right?
information. And
So
there's
send
a
it.
lot of
So
coaches
send it.
out there that I don't get any information on, and there are kids at those schools. I'm just thinking back last year, Middleton, Ridge Community. I'm sure there's a couple other ones where they had these kids, and these kids were having these good years, and I didn't know anything. And
Right.
and in the end, I probably did have them ranked correctly, but I didn't know about them at different times and different things they're doing. So for people to reach out to me, like I said, it makes them if they're on my radar, it's never a bad thing.
I think I reached out to you a couple times this year when I was at tournaments, and I saw like an 11 and 12 ranked kid that you had, or a 15 and 16 ranked kid, or somebody that was close. And those matches went to overtime, went to extra, and I'm like, pretty good. But man, this is cool. I'm glad.
I can't say I like when I get them right, but I like when they're close and I have them close.
Yeah, I'm glad you jumped on.
I'm glad they fixed my garbage disposal.
Yeah, feel free to jump on every week. Typically, we go at 11 Eastern time, but today we're 11 Western time. Because
all right, before Brant jumps off, and then we're gonna wrap up. Brant, give me 3 takeaways from the classifications.
3 takeaways. Well, the main one was
2A.
The 2A, and the other takeaway from that was the intricacies of the 2A. And I'm trying. I mean, there's a piece that I wrote that's up on my website on KABRA Wrestling. Let me just pull it up so I can, because I spent last night like thinking in my head, oh, these are my reactions. I think the thing to watch, these were called tentative. You can argue them or appeal on them. But
assuming nothing changes.
But I think that's something to watch. I don't know who the lowest team in 2A is in population. According to the bylaw, they should be in 1A. I don't know who that would be. I think 333 girls teams was a significant number. they didn't change any, Flagler moved, but then so did Matanzas, and Freedom moved, but then so did Osceola. So like, I don't think they split up any good rivalries. I don't think the inside the districts was up, but 333 girls teams. It's at least 30 new teams listed that didn't compete in last postseason. If 15 or 20 of them actually compete, that's more growth to the sport, and the teams that have been competing are getting bigger. So I wonder how long until that becomes a multi-classification thing. I think something that'll be interesting is Kissimmee Osceola is now in Region 3 in 3A. They have been 3A2 as long as I can remember. I've been covering this thing since Tuesday. I have to look in my records. I don't go back beyond 2011 on places, but I know I have the records somewhere. But they've always been 2A5 or 3A5. Region 2-5. Now they're in Region 3. Will they continue to host regions when every single team that's in the region is south and east of them?
Great question.
That's a takeaway for me. And those are the main things. And just the reality is people are going to be angry, and change is hard. And there are some paths that have been made tougher, and some paths that have been made easier.
It happens.
But every path, and this is what I wrote about, every path in Florida is tougher now. And when I first started covering the sport in 2004, and I went to the state tournament, and as the first couple of years as I got to learn things, there were a lot of like almost, you won't call them a bye, but there were easy matches, even sometimes through the quarters. There aren't as many easy matches now at the state tournament for anyone. There are not easy region matches in some cases. There are weight classes at regions that are, state-worthy guys and girls are not making it to the state tournament. So, yeah, it's a tougher path, but every path is tougher right now in Florida because for the last 10 years, our top echelon has been improving and our depth has been improving. And there's more kids that know what they're doing and can beat you on a given day, and it makes every path tougher. So there's some takeaways.
I couldn't have said that better. I think that was perfect, honestly. And I think that, as I guess my last point as it relates to the new classifications would be, you're going to focus in, like we talked about earlier, on your school or your classification or your region or whatever. But take a step back for a moment if you get a chance and just kind of see the landscape to understand kind of how things have changed. So that would be my thing. Yeah.
I appreciate
it. And lots of changes. And please, I know we'd love to hear more about the NIL once all that stuff comes and laid out, once you get some sort of outline of what they may do. We'd love to get
I don't know how much I'll read on that for a while because I don't know how quickly it'll affect wrestling. To be honest.
Yeah.
I go to high school football games because my daughter's in the band at the local high school, and so I enjoy them. But I can't tell you who's what and where on that.
You think the NIL will affect band members?
I hope so. She's a very good percussionist. She's also a viola instructor. No, I mean it could.
We'd like to offer
anytime you want to argue transferring, I will always support it, because if my daughter was not at a school that was great in music, then I'd want her to go somewhere that was. And I feel the same way about athletics. But nobody would scoff at me if I sent my daughter to another school because she's great at percussion and they don't have a good band at her school. But
you don't think they'll get hit with sanctions because they're moving band members?
You will never have someone on social media going, "Oh, sure, of course, Satellite always gets
you pulled that clarinet group.
All the good actors and music people always Satellite always gets it.
All the good drummers are at Northwestern."
Yeah.
All right, Brant, thanks so much, man.
Drop it on, man.
I apprate it. Thanks for the time.
Hey,
guys.
We do this every Tuesday, so if you want to,
I do rankings every Tuesday, so we'll see.
He's trying. Right. See you, man.
All right, see you, buddy. Well,
all right, Dan.
Awesome.
How long have we been on now?
I don't know, a long time, but that was really awesome to have. That was really awesome to have Brant jump on and talk about that. There's a lot of moving parts in the last 24 hours, whatever, in Florida. So it was good to have him on, and he is definitely all things Florida. He does have his ear to the ground, and he's always involved in all that, as you know, and we know. And so it was good
Yeah.
that they fixed his garbage disposal in time. We got him on. As far as Spartan Nationals, put a bow on that. Yeah, I think they did a great job. Congratulations to the top three of 16U and Greco and girls that get to qualify to go and compete at that amazing place in North Dakota, the Fargo Dome. And if you haven't been there before and you're a kid that gets to go, please enjoy it. If you're a parent,
And you know what? If you're a kid that gets to go and you see either of us, Dan will be taking pictures specifically for the state of Florida or for Florida wrestling and that sort of thing. I'll be taking pictures with all of the Southeast. But if you see us walking around, say, hey, I'm up on mat 2, and we'll come over and take pictures. So please let us know. Like, don't walk by us. Say something, because sometimes I'm just in a fog with freaking 30 mats, or whatever the case is, all over the floor, and I'm trying to figure out where in the world somebody's going to be. You see us, man, tell me where you're going to be. I'll come over and take pictures. I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, it's great when somebody shoots you a text and says, I'm in the hole, or taps you on the shoulder and say, I just got called. Because truthfully, now obviously Jason at a bigger level than me, but there's a few hundred kids from Florida that show up to wrestle at this tournament between boys and girls. So it's
and I'm all over the place. I'm taking pictures of everyone all the time and that sort of thing, but it's chaos. I mean, I've got
it's just difficult to be there.
My notifications on my phone are just crazy with so-and-so's on mat 1, so-and-so's on mat 2. But if you're sitting right there and getting ready to wrestle, just say, hey, I'm getting ready to come up right here. That's cool.
And just so you know, in Fargo, if we miss your mat, it's not our fault. It's the internet's fault. The notification came through about four matches after you. Yeah. I get a notification. Bartel's coming up on mat 3, and then I go over there and I'm like, "Where's Bartel?"
And they're now back on 95 pounders for the next round.
Right. And they're like, "He wrestled like 4 mats ago." I'm like, "I just got this," and I'm like, "Okay, I get it. What happened?" But
so before we wrap this up, I want to give a shout out to a couple kids. Number one. Since we're sticking in the state of Florida, Brendan Abden had a great tournament in Ohio. He wrestled exceptionally well in Greco. I thought I watched a couple of his matches. I thought that was awesome. Corey Land out of the state of Alabama made the world team in U20s in Greco. There were a lot of kids from different places across the Southeast who had some really good matches. Or good tournaments.
Didn't Van Hoke made the team too, didn't he?
Did Van Hoke make the team? I'm off the top of my head.
I saw an edit this morning from Little Rock, and it had Van Hoke, Abden, and someone else on there.
Van Hoke, he lost in the finals to a kid from Alaska at 67 kilos.
So he's on the team, but he's not.
Well, I guess yeah.
Right.
Hang on.
Alternate.
He lost in the challenge tournament finals. But then there was, 67 kilos at U20s. I have to look this up. So the thing you guys have to know, for anyone who's interested but doesn't necessarily know, is that if you won the US Open at U20s, you got to sit in the finals just like to make the Olympic team. You were sitting waiting for the challenge tournament to play out and that sort of thing. And Brennan I think he was second in the challenge tournament. Yeah, he was second in the challenge tournament. And then the kid he lost to Pardoon lost to Joel Adams, the returning world champion at the weight in the best of 2 of 3. So keep that in mind. Corey Land made the team. He will represent the United States at the World Championships in U20. That was pretty cool. But the thing that's most important to me is that is that whether they are representing the United States in the World Championships or they're not, or whatever, you go look at the U20s or the U23 nationals, and if you are in those brackets, you are amongst the best of that age group in the world. I mean, you are at you're at such a level. And whether you went 0-2 in that challenge tournament, or you went 4-2 and lost in a blood round, or you made the podium or whatever, you are at a whole other level than so many other individuals that are competing in this sport. So fantastic job by everyone who competed.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of Southeast kids out there competing both in freestyle and Greco.
Yeah, I mean, I was with one of the dads of a kid that went up there yesterday, and then he said, "Man, it was a fun experience. So get to be around the best of the best, and you're in the bracket with the best." And it's crazy. It was similar to when he was explaining it to me. I was like, "Wow, that's the same thing I experienced at the Olympic trials." Right? He's like, "You had these brackets, and the first kid is a double Fargo All-American, a Super 32 blah 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 blah, an NHSCA blah 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 blah, a returning blah blah blah, two-time blah 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 against the multi blah 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 blah, right?" And those two kids might go 0-2 or 1-2 or whatever. But meanwhile, if you took them anywhere around the world, they're probably winning most tournaments they're put into, right? And it was insane.
Yeah, I mean, this is besides the senior level men and women who are making the Olympic team, for this group, this is the pond. Like, this is the level that you want to get to. And the fact that you're in the pond competing against the other fish in that pond says that you are at that level. You are at a whole other level than everyone else that's competing. Yeah,
and I was happy to see CJ up there as one of those fish in the pond, man. He's working hard, and it's good to see the growth. But yeah, anyway,
absolutely,
man. What I think we did a long one here, but sorry to keep you from your long one here. Sorry to keep you from your vacation. Yeah, I know. So what you're in Utah, you're on vacation, right? You're not there watching wrestling or anything, are you?
So I'm actually seeing family. I was back for a funeral. So it's okay. It's okay. We did make it a week, because if you're gonna spend the money and everything else can come out and do that, you're gonna, you're not gonna just, I wasn't gonna fly in and fly back out. So it turned into a little bit of a nice week vacation. But yeah, that was the original intent. Cool. What's funny is right around the corner from me is where cadet duels will be next week. So
are you going to stay?
I am not going to stay. I can't afford to be away that long. But if everybody tunes back in for next week's show, I think you and I should do a preview of the 14Us and the 16Us, because both of those tournaments will be taking place across the country next week.
Absolutely, for sure. And also, we've got our summer knockout, which is a great duels tournament that is happening 6th, 7th, and 8th. I'll be down at the inaugural Miami Hawks tournament on the 9th with Pat Lugo. So we've got a lot going on. Fargo camps are starting to happen. There's one that happens at Mako. There's one that's happening at Spartan. Those are going to be coming up as we go farther. You've got a BB camp happening. You've got a Florida Pride camp happening. You've got Well Trains camp is happening this weekend up in North Florida, the Panhandle. I'm probably missing a few, but I mean, you've got Fritz coming in. You've got Brendan Abden coming in and doing a camp. You've got just people all over the place. I think the Mintos are coming in and doing a camp. I think I saw some stuff there, but anywhere from BB and from every part of our state. I think you have Jeremy Carter doing a camp. So if you can't find a camp to go to or a place to go to get good training in the next couple of weeks, you're just not looking hard enough, because it's all over there. And if I missed you, please tap it
Yeah,
in the
let us know.
comments. Let us know, because I see the post and there's a lot going on and good. And if you guys, one thing before we leave, if you've actually sat through this whole thing and you can hear this.
Right, the three of you that made it all the way through the hour and
Yes,
20 minutes
absolutely.
or whatever.
Absolutely. So if you did listen to this whole thing, if you guys have topics that you want us to discuss, or you want us to bring up, or you have questions that you want answered, other than being tied up at a tournament, we're going to attempt to do this every Tuesday. So just send us some topics or some subjects, and we'd love to get those answered for you or talk about them for you. Or well, I won't know shit about it, but I'll ask him and he'll know it because he's the brains. So we'll do it that way.
Anyway, there's a lot of people out there who would tell you I'm not the brains of the outfit. So there we go.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're doing, and have you even wrestled? And
all right. You guys have a good one. Dan, it was great being on with you, man. And yeah, tune back in next week because we're going to talk about the duels. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. See you, man.
Take care.